In a previous video on Soviet cryptids, I talked briefly about Vladimir Pushkaryov. He was a Russian geologist who went on treks for several cryptids, including living mammoths and almas, Russia's version of Bigfoot. What I didn't mention was that Vladimir met a bizarre and mysterious end on one of these trips. Vladimir was a graduate of Rostov State University for geological prospecting, and he was sent to work in eastern Russia. This area has a lot of Yeti-like cryptids, like the almas, Yagmorte, Menk, Golubyavin, Kul, Tungu, and Chichunya. It was during some geological work in 1972 that he first heard of the Yagmorte from locals. They were sighted near the Pechora and Igma rivers of the modern-day Komi region. The locals described them as large, muscular, covered in fur, and having 6 toes. The creature was also said to have a distinctive piercing laughter. These stories greatly interested Vladimir, who began looking into them whenever he could. He was particularly interested in the Yamalo-Nenets region, where one story stood out. Teacher Marfa Senkina had been hunting with her father in the early 1900s. They were staying in a small hut in the Yamal Peninsula when a neighbor's dog began barking. The neighbor was elderly and had lived there for many years. Marfa asked him why the dog was barking, and he said it was because of a creature called the Zemlemmer, or land measurer. It apparently traveled through the area at the same time every year. Marfa decided to wait to try and see the creature. During the night, dogs began barking again. That's when she saw a large figure with red eyes moving effortlessly through the thick forests. One dog approached the creature, which picked it up and effortlessly flung it away with one arm. After that, it disappeared into the darkness. Vladimir would also look into an incident known as the Barzowski miracle in southern Russia. The story goes that in 1845, 2 men were attacked by a hairy creature. It ran at one of the men, and he had to fight it off with his bare hands. While the two were fighting, the other man approached it from the side and shot the creature. The description of the ape-man was absolutely bizarre. It was about 2.2 meters or 7 feet tall, and had claws on its hands instead of fingers. It also had no toes, and its eyes were uneven, with one being near its forehead and the other closer to its cheek. The 2 men cut into the creature, which gushed black blood. But they were in deep wilderness, and didn't want to return to the area out of fear. So the body of the animal disappeared. Another encounter Vladimir found was from 1920. Around 8 people were making hay near the Tasilma River in the Komi region. Then, 2 creatures appeared on the opposite side of the river. One was smaller and black, and the other taller and whitish-gray. The 2 appeared to be playing, with the smaller one chasing the larger one around a tree. The workers became afraid and hid inside a nearby hut. They eventually came out, gathered a boat and a gun, and investigated the area. They found 2 sets of barefoot tracks near the tree. One set was said to be very large and had 6 toes instead of 5. One witness described the tracks as very flat, with the toes being spread apart. By that point, however, the 2 mysterious figures had disappeared. A similar story was told to Vladimir by a couple of tourists in the Komi region. This time, they spotted an entire group of hairy 2-meter or 6.5 foot tall creatures. Like the previous encounter, they seemed to be playing, splashing around in a river, and even laughing. Vladimir found sightings from a wide variety of people and groups, which he believed showed there was something to these stories. He also thought that the encounters were mostly realistic, without supernatural aspects. These stories captivated him so much that he quit his job as a geologist, joining a biology facility instead. He began to go on multiple expeditions to search for these creatures, even going alone sometimes. In 1977, he spoke at the Relict Hominoid seminar to discuss 8-man cryptids. By this point, however, he seems to have changed some of his opinions about the Almas. During the conference, he controversially proposed that Almas had supernatural powers. These included cloaking, telepathy, hypnotization, and teleportation. Vladimir came to this conclusion in part after finding large bare footprints leading away from a house and into a field, where they suddenly stopped. It was Vladimir's belief in the paranormal that may have led to his untimely end. He sought out a psychic in Moscow for advice on finding the Almas. The psychic predicted that he would have an encounter with the creatures in the Hulga River Basin, so Vladimir set out in October of 1978 for the final time. Fellow cryptozoologist Maya Bykova noted that he was acting erratically before he left. He only had a light jacket on, no rifle, no knife, and no axe for firewood. He also traveled in a rubber raft down a river that was already beginning to freeze over. Most dangerously of all, he went alone. When questioned later, a local said that winter had come to the area Vladimir was in even earlier than usual. Ominously, some of Vladimir's colleagues even claimed he said, "Nothing bad can happen to me." Vladimir would disappear during his expedition. Search parties were mounted in order to find him by some of his friends, but they had limited success due to starting late and harsh conditions. His raft, tent, and strangely some burnt socks were found. They even found some of his notes, but they offered no clues to his fate. So what happened to Vladimir? Due to the nature of his expedition, some people believe that he was eaten by the Almas. Whether or not the cryptids are real, I don't think that's what happened. I think the most likely answer is that he met an untimely end due to a combination of poor preparation and a poor mindset. Going on a solo expedition to a remote area is already dangerous enough, but doing so in the winter with limited equipment is a recipe for disaster. There are also signs that he was suffering from hypothermia. Cryptid researcher Sonia pointed out that he may have burned his socks in a desperate attempt to get warm. If he was attacked by Almas, why would he burn his socks? In fact, Vladimir wouldn't be the first cryptid researcher to encounter bad weather conditions. The article The Seekers of Snowman mentions an expedition of 8 men disappearing in the modern Sakha Republic. They had been looking for the Snowman, a name sometimes used to refer to 8-man cryptids in Russia. It wouldn't be until the spring after their disappearance that their fate was discovered. The men had unfortunately been buried in an avalanche and uncovered by the thawing snow. Locals did still blame the Snowman, which they thought caused the avalanche to stop the people searching for it. The article also mentions an Almas hunter named Oleg Sharov. Sharov had been looking for Almas for years, even claiming to have an encounter with one. While on another expedition, he tragically passed away from a heart attack. Vladimir was still young when he disappeared, so a heart attack is unlikely. But any number of health conditions can quickly turn deadly when you're alone in the remote wilderness. Another darker explanation is that Vladimir was eaten by prisoners. A scientist not too far from where he disappeared named R.B. Udalov suggested that this fate had befallen him. There were some prisons in the general area, but there's no direct evidence that this happened to him, just speculation. There is at least one happy theory, though, that Vladimir finally discovered the Almas and lived out his remaining days among them in peace. If my videos have inspired you to go look for strange and rare animals, hopefully this one inspires you to always be prepared when traveling in the wilderness. Thank you for watching. Special shoutout to Sonia for doing some translations for this video. A huge shoutout goes to my Patreons Timothy, Wild World, John R., Lenarts, Gerhard, and Johnny Tsunami. If you'd like to support my channel, a link to my Patreon will be below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you shared the video with someone you think may also enjoy it. Some artists I'd like to shout out in this video are Jerka Huska, Critter Zoology, Eels and Things, and Felipe Coudray. I'll have links to a bunch of great cryptozoology artists below, so go check that out. That's all for this video. Bring a buddy if you're traveling outdoors, and I will see you in the next one.